This is Kari and you're listening to the Girl Mom Podcast. Today on the show, I'm covering a new topic that I love to talk about, and that is travel. When I was growing up, my family didn't really travel much besides our annual beach trips, and I was totally fine with that. I had no desire to see the bigger world because I didn't know what I was missing. I was in my late 40s when I first traveled to Europe, and honestly, it was life-changing. I experienced it with my husband, my kids, and his extended family as our party of 17 people visited Greece. We have relatives who still live in Greece, so not only did my mother-in-law get to see cousins who she hadn't seen in 17 years, but we also enjoyed an unforgettable family adventure that bonded us in ways I never anticipated. To this day, the Kampakis cousins are extremely close because of what we've experienced together through travel. And whether you love to travel already, or you're like me, coming to the party a little bit later in life, you're going to benefit and enjoy the insight and advice from my guest on the show today, Kathryn Burns. Kathryn is a dear friend of mine here in Mountain Brook who I met when she planned a senior trip for my daughter several years ago. Our daughters Katie and Marie Claire dance together as Dorians and are very close. Kathryn is an amazing travel agent affiliated with Brownell and Virtuoso, and she is knocking it out of the park, planning trips for families in our community and beyond. Kathryn's love for travel began as she traveled the world, working in the wine industry, and then moving on to sell champagne and spirits too. Kathryn is passionate about travel and exercise as a marathon runner and a pickleball player, and she loves spending time in her favorite spot, Colorado. She is a delight, and if you're looking for a travel agent, I highly recommend Kathryn, and I've linked to her website and her Instagram page in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a 5-star review or comment wherever you listen and share it with your friends. Also, my new devotional for teen and college girls is out, and I've linked to it in the show notes as well. If your daughter's enjoying the book, please leave a review on Amazon so that others can find it too. Your support means more than you know. Thanks for tuning in today and enjoy the show. Welcome, Kathryn. I'm so excited to have you on the Girl Mom Podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, Kari. This is my very first podcast, so this is lots of fun.
Well, I knew that you would do great just because you're a great conversationalist, and that's really what it's all about. And you and I can talk about 50 million subjects, but I think travel is something that we're both passionate about. You know a lot more about it than I do, but this is a different topic than what I normally cover on here, but I know that it's a topic that a lot of people are interested in. So,
well, it's been a wild, fun job for me over the past 12 or so years since Katie started kindergarten. Where I've met a lot of people, I've been a lot of places, I've made a lot of connections that have just been so valuable to me. So travel has led me in a lot of directions, which has been really, really fun.
Well, you just do such a great job. So we were talking earlier how we first connected back in 2021 when Ella was about to graduate and we were doing a senior trip for her and her friends. And it's so funny. I think I texted you that day. And then you texted me right back and said something like you had one of my quotes on your bulletin board at home.
I still do, yes. Yeah. I have a bulletin board full of photos from trips and quotes that I like and thank you notes from people that I've sent places. So it's fun to be able to refer back to that stuff.
Yeah. Well, and it was so fun because then I think it was about a year or two later, our daughters started to dance together.
Right.
Yeah.
Katie and Marie Claire, which is so fun. And so now I've been able to follow you for the past 5 or 6 years and watch your story unfold and do trips for friends of yours and neighbors and, all sorts of kids, different ages. It's been a lot of fun.
That's so fun. Well, tell us how you got into becoming a travel agent, because I know we talked about this earlier too, how most people don't have a linear career path. A lot of times you start off doing one thing and then that leads to something that you eventually love even more. And that was the case for you.
Definitely.
You traveled the world with some pretty, important big time jobs, and that's really what developed your love for travel. Is that right?
So when I graduated from college, I went to Aspen for a while. Then I got in the wine and spirits business there, selling wine to hotels and restaurants, kind of with the bag of wine on your back and your boots on traipsing through the snow. So that was a fun experience. And that led me to a job in Denver, where I worked for a wholesaler there, and then back to Atlanta, where I worked for Empire Distributors. And that led to, in a long line of things, led to Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, where I worked on the wine and spirit side. So I sold Moet champagne and Hennessy cognac in the era of the hip-hop movement in Atlanta. So there was a lot of Hennessy cognac going on there. And then I worked for Ernest and Julio Gallo, managed the state of Alabama for them. And then when Katie came along, my second, I took a break and I was studying for the real estate exam. And my mom is a great realtor, but it just didn't feel right for me. So I put that on hold, and I was at a table at the church at a luncheon, and I was seated next to a lady that's a contemporary of my mother's, and she was going on a cruise to Australia and New Zealand the next day. And my face kind of lit up, and I was said, "Oh, I've been there. It's amazing. You need to see this. And the people there are great, and the food is just so fantastic. And New Zealand is just gorgeous." And I told the story of how I ended up, seeing those places, which was all because I had been in the wine business, and they had sent me to all these countries to check out, the wine programs there. And she looked at me and kind of crooked her head and said, "I think I need you to go talk to my husband." And her husband owned All Seasons Travel. And I went in and sat with him and told him kind of my career path, and said I was ready to get back into doing something new and different, that I had traveled a lot of places with the wine lens on, in France and Italy and Australia and New Zealand. And he said, "Well, we haven't really hired anybody new in a long time, but we'd love to give it a whirl." So I kind of gave it a whirl.
Wow.
So, and then after that, COVID came, which put a halt on everything, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I rebranded myself and started my own LLC and went to work under the umbrella of Brownell, which is where I am now.
Wow. And we were talking about how it's so important that, like I said, that most people's career path is not linear. And I think that's so important for our kids. And if anybody's listening, they're in college, to hear that, because they have this idea that they're supposed to know exactly what they want to do out of college. And there's so much pressure, but, really it's like, whatever God's calling you to do, whether when you're 18 or 20 or 22, that might not be the thing, your final stop. But right. A lot of times it's going to lead you to that. And I was just sharing this story recently with somebody. I think it was on that podcast, How I Built This. And I believe the company was Stacy's Pita Chips, which I love. But the story was that the company didn't start as pita chips. It actually started as, I think they made sandwiches. And it was a little mobile unit. They would make sandwiches with this pita bread. But they'd have this long line of people waiting. And every day they were throwing out pita bread that wouldn't get used that day in the sandwiches. And so what they started doing was taking yesterday's pita bread and making chips out of it. And then they would give it to the people who were waiting. Anyway, long story short, those chips were a hit, and that ended up becoming the business.
That's so interesting.
And I think that's it's just such an example of, like, that is so often what happens in our careers. Like, you had this great career in the wine business and the liquor business, and it allowed you to travel and go see the world, and that really whet your appetite for seeing the world. Exactly. And that's how I felt about it too. It's like when you see what all's out there, you're like, wow, I just want to see more. And so it's so cool, I think, how God can do that in a career that He really, I call it parlaying off the original thing that you were doing. And then, and the fact that you were traveling in France and Italy and all these cool places that people want to visit.
And none of it would have worked without the step prior.
Yes.
So I couldn't talk intelligently about sending people to France if I hadn't been to France and seen parts of France that I don't even usually send people to,
Right.
Or parts of all over Tuscany and Italy, with the wine, under the wine umbrella, helped me to be confident enough to say, here's where I think you should go, and here's what I think you should do. And it's just been, it feels like a blessing, and it feels divinely inspired for sure.
Yeah, it's so neat. Well, and like my family, we didn't really grow up taking trips. People didn't take fancy vacations as much when we were growing up. Plus, I came from a family of 5 kids, so we were usually going to Panama City or, taking beach trips, which was so fun. We have so many great memories. And so I think the cool thing about Europe is everybody's story, if you go, everybody's story is so different. There are some people that, I know some people whose 2-year-olds have more, stamps in their passports than mine do. Like they are just a traveling family and it started early. And then other people wait. They save up or they wait until later in life. And so I think there's a beautiful story that can be told either way. I never went to Europe until I was in my 40s, and we took this big trip with our family. We went to Greece back in 2017. Big Campakis family trip. There were 17 of us. It was so fun. It was crazy. But anyway, like that just whet our appetite. And so, you go somewhere once and you're like, oh, I didn't know the world was like this. It's so neat to get out of your normal stomping grounds. And so I think that's what travel does, is it just shows you what's possible and what's going on beyond your home.
For me, it's been so eye-opening to watch how families, the glue that binds families together while they're on a vacation.
Yes.
So there's no distractions, and there's no what's for dinner, and there's no dance team practice. It's just you're there, and generally it's lots of fun, and you can be together, and you're laughing. And I mean, I get letters from people that are so dear where, with people saying, you have no idea what you did for my family. And I'm not curing diseases or anything, but it does feel so satisfying to put together something for a family, have them go and spend that time together, and then come home and feel so connected again, or reconnected, I should say. And the pictures of them riding in the sidecar through the streets of Paris, or riding bikes, eating gelato, or, floating on a boat in Santorini, or being at their hotel that they were dying to get into with the plunge pool in Positano. I mean, all of that just feels super valuable to me. Like, I'm doing something that I'm giving a service to somebody, or people are paying attention to the gift of travel, I should say.
Yeah. And, what I've realized in parenting is that, we really only have a little window of time to be taking these family trips sometimes with our kids, because once they're out of college or once they're working in the real world, you can't just take off 2 weeks in the summer. They might get 2 weeks of vacation for the entire year. And also at that time, they probably have a lot of friends who are getting married and other things that are taking their time. So it was probably when my kids were teenagers that we kind of started like, okay, let's do Chicago, let's do Europe, or let's do New York, just different trips that we could do. And you're right, it's just the memories that you make that you can't even predict. And I'll never forget, one thing when we did the big family trip the first time. We've done 2 big family trips to Greece, one in 2022 and one in 2017. And something that my sister-in-law would say that her friends would tell her was like, my family would kill each other. We could never all go on a big trip like that. And of course, we had moments where people were fighting or squabbling, whatever. But overall, it was awesome. But the coolest thing that I think I witnessed was, especially doing this with my mother-in-law and the cousins and everybody else, is that our kids got so close. And, in the course of 10 days or 2 weeks, you look over and you start seeing, okay, one of the uncles talking to your 7-year-old, or the 7-year-old hanging out and walking with the 18-year-old. And I think that's what's so great about travel, is it puts everybody on that level playing field. If you're on a trip together and you're doing something together, it doesn't matter if you have a grandparent and a grandchild, or if there's a 10-year age difference. You're bonding over something that's common. And I think that's what trips set you up to do. Whether you were going to the beach 5 hours away or taking a fancy trip to Europe, that's the beauty of getting away and doing that together.
I agree completely. There's a trip for everyone, and it doesn't have to be, a 14-day trip to France or, a ski trip in Switzerland. I mean, all of the trips have value. The ones that I did with my kids growing up to Jackson Hole and to New York and to Chicago, I have pictures of those all over my office too. And, the kids are different ages and they're experiencing different things. And, a lot of times the getting out of your normal routine is what makes it so magical. Somebody told me one time that I used to do some Disney trips when my kids were younger, and somebody said that they asked their child when they came back from Disney what was the best part of the trip, and they said, "Oh, the monorail," which is so funny, So you would assume that kids would be like, oh, it was breakfast with Mickey Mouse or whatever. But I mean, a lot of times just the flight over there and having somebody bring you dinner. And if you've never traveled, overseas, I mean, all of the parts of it are an adventure. Or riding the train through, from Venice to Rome, or, just all these experiences that partners of mine, especially in Europe, really anywhere, really in the U.S. too, can put together. It's just amazing. We took a trip with Katie to the Utah National Parks one year, and we had the best time. And one of the things that we did in Zion National Park was hike this. It's not a trail; it's in the water. It's called the Narrows, and it's a super neat experience because you hike in waders with these big sticks and. It was freezing cold, and our guide we still keep in touch with from that, and so it's just all the memories are just really, really fun.
Yeah, and even when things don't go as planned, that's a memory too. And when you're sitting there talking about the different things that can happen, I remember it was on one of our trips. We wanted to go back to this little village in Naxos. Our family's in Naxos, and we wanted to go back to this little village, and Harry and Ella and I went. We're like, we'll figure it out. And we get lost. And of course, I'm feeling frustrated because I'm like, this is going to take longer than we thought. And, it took us, I guess it took about an hour more than it should have. But anyway, we're lost, trying to get there. And then all of a sudden, we see the most beautiful mountain in front of us. And it's a marble mountain. I mean, it's like white marble all over this mountain. I'm like, oh, this is where they get marble countertops from. But I've never seen like the actual marble that I'm used to seeing in a kitchen or in a bathroom on an actual mountain. And just like seeing that view, it was like, wow. And it was so cool because we're like, we got lost, but this would not have happened if we didn't get lost. And so like true. Even that became one of my favorite memories from the trip. And that's really what happens when you do travel is you gotta leave yourself open to those experiences.
For sure.
That you didn't
because
plan.
Things go wrong.
Then,
go wrong. They can turn into great things.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so we're going to talk about planning a trip to Europe and just kind of basic tips. I know a lot of people are, in this mode right now thinking about their summer vacations and either they're going to Europe or thinking about going to Europe. So what is your first tip for somebody that wants to plan a trip like this?
Well, selfishly and self-promotingly, I think it is very important to have a travel agent if you are going anywhere. That means that your hotel room in Chicago perhaps has a nice welcome gift when you arrive and maybe a stuffed animal for your daughter and breakfast for you every morning. That means that if you're embarking on a bigger journey that's a 2-week trip to Italy, you have somebody that has contacts in all the different cities that you want to see that can help you choose your hotels and choose your tours, and that has access to the best tour guides that helps you get from Venice to Rome or point A to point B and puts you on the right train. And also that is a contact for you while you're there. So sometimes people are hesitant to take on a big trip like that because they feel like they don't want to be floating around in Europe with nobody to contact, and that's not the case with how I do business and how we plan trips. We have very, very deep contacts with people, I would say, or maybe I would say we have very, very loyal partners in Europe that watch out for clients, and that's the way I like to do business because things go wrong.
I mean, I think that's the key to a great travel agent like you, is that the really good ones are, especially the ones that are established, they have great groundspeople that, in those areas, so that even though you might not physically be there, you've got somebody you can contact and quickly get in touch with if your client has an issue.
It's so important. So now there's WhatsApp, which is how I communicate with everyone in Europe, and I have them on my phone, and I say, how are the clients doing today? And they say they are doing great. And I say, did Ms. Smith get her luggage from Air France? And they say, we've sent somebody to get her luggage for her. So
would you have that like a different conversation with each point person that your client is, wow, that's a lot of work?
So my main group of people that I use in Europe is Queen of Clubs, and they have a good reach all over Italy, all over France. They do Switzerland. I think they're going into Spain now. But I have somebody that is my go-to person in almost every country.
Wow.
And I'm loyal to them, and they're loyal back to me, and it just works really well. I feel like they take great care of my people. For instance, I just had somebody that did lose her luggage, and it wasn't anything that we did, but it was nice to be able to send her a bottle of champagne to her room because she had also had a flight canceled. And it was nice to be able to say, hey, sorry for the rocky start on your trip. Enjoy a glass of champagne.
That's awesome.
On us. And it's about creating a full experience so that the client, and that's what the travel agent can do. The client can put their foot on the plane and not have to think until they land back home.
I love that. And this is just how my brain thinks, is that I love when my daughters get to witness that. Like I'm always trying to talk to them about hospitality, or when you work, like you want to be the person who goes above and beyond. And I remember one time we took a trip to Charleston, and I'm like, girls, take note. Like at the hotel, every restaurant we went to, I'm like, the hospitality just does not get better, like just the above and beyond, just, meeting all your needs. And I think it's so neat. So that woman whose luggage was lost, and then she goes to her hotel room and there's a bottle of champagne. I love when my daughters see that. Like I want them to be that kind of person that, hey, somebody's having a bad day. Why don't you send them something? I think there's just so many life lessons to be taken there, just on these little elements of a trip, of like what you're teaching your child to be that person, not only on the receiving end of hospitality, but to be the giving end, no matter what career choice they make, because chances are they're going to have some kind of job where they need to be taking care of people like that too.
Well, people like the human element of the trip too, and they like to feel like that, there's a safety net under them when they're traveling. And I mean, that is a nice, service to be able to provide. I don't ever want to send somebody out the door and say, have a great trip, and that be that. It's not. I mean, we talk to them. They are texted by my partners in Europe every night before their next day, and the text generally says, Charles is your driver and will pick you up at 9:00 in the lobby of your hotel and take you on your tour of Versailles for the day. Here's his phone number.
Wow.
If you need anything in between now and then, feel free to text him. So it's a great service that keeps you very connected. And people, when they come home from trips, will say, "Oh, we loved our guide, and at the Louvre, or we loved." Our hike in the Narrows, and please make sure that they know how meaningful that experience was for us because of the guide.
Yes.
And so my partners in Europe do a great job of holding tight to the people that are really, really good.
Yes. Your guide makes all the difference.
Your guide makes a huge
I mean, that's a life lesson. Your guide for any new territory that you're going to do, the guide makes all the difference. Okay, so I do believe in getting a travel agent too. So first step, getting a travel agent. If somebody wants to contact you, is the best way to get in touch with you through Instagram, your website?
We're working on a new website, but right now it's KathrynBurnsTravel.com. They can find me on Brownell's website.
Okay.
Or they can reach out through social media, Instagram or Facebook, either way. So
Okay.
I'm easy to find, and I'm usually on all those social media channels, seeing what people are posting from their trips and stuff.
Well, and you do an amazing job. You're so on top of it. I don't know how you juggle it all, but you do it so well.
I have a good team.
You really do.
I do. I have a really good team. I have Kristen and Mary Collins that work with me, keep the wheels on the bus.
Well, they've got good leadership.
Well, thank you.
Okay, so second step is once you've decided on a travel agent, set the discovery call. So what do you normally do on these calls?
The discovery call is really, really important, and it's always a phone call. It could be a text or an email to start a conversation, but it's very important to talk to the person who wants to travel, get a feel for what they want to do, who's traveling, where they want to go, what they want to accomplish on the trip. So I have people that go to Europe that are like, I do not want to go in any museum. Send me to Lake Como for a week and let me hang out there, or send me to Positano for a week, and people that all they want is the best guides and the best museums, and they want either a little hand holding or a lot of hand holding. So we do it all. The cost of the trip is important, how long people have saved and what kind of hotel they want to stay in. Is it a 4-star hotel or a 5-star hotel, and what the flow of the trip might be. So all of that pace and flow, and, what can we do? What can we see? What's available for the kids? The kids being a part of the trip is very important. I tell people often to involve their children in the planning. So sitting at the dinner table and saying, hey, we're going to Spain. What are the kind of things that you want to do in Spain? Do you want to eat paella? Do you want to go to a flamenco show? Do you want to bicycle? Do you want to be... And if you give the children each something that they have to look forward to, then they can kind of, tolerate walking through the Louvre for 3 hours if they know they're going to get the gelato bicycle tour later, or whatever, whatever those things might be. But I like for everybody to have a stake in the game so that they feel like that it's not mom and dad's trip and we're just tagging along.
Oh, I love that. That's so good. I know. I'm thinking Spain. I'm dying to go to Spain and see all those churches.
Yes.
So I definitely would need, I don't think my kids would want to spend hours in there like I would. So we would definitely need something else that they pick too.
There's a lot of fun to be had. I mean, Spain's a fun country for that. I mean, I have people that go to Spain for spring break. And
really? It's
not really warm, but it's, they love it. They just traipse around and go hiking and see all the sights and eat all the great food, and it's less crowded then.
And it is so fun. Harry and I also, we went to Italy years ago for our 20th anniversary. And I mean, just comparing things to America, it just makes you, we're so new. I mean, and, our tour guide was like, okay, this church, some of these churches took 400 years to build. Yeah. And they showed us this pair of doors. It was a set of doors. And she told us that it took 2 men 25 years to make these doors that open up to a church. And I just remember Harry, we were walking away, and he's like, can you imagine your entire career being spent on doors?
Right.
Like one set of doors. And I'm like, that's kind of the difference between, I think, the quality of the workmanship over there and the appreciation for something that is sustainable and that's going to last, versus here, we're just like, let's Amazon it,
Let's Amazon.
Let's go make these doors in, a week or whatever.
Well, Stephen and I were in Italy right after we got married, and we went into a cafe to get a coffee, and I said, oh, I'll just take mine to go. And the guy looked at me like, No, you will not. I mean,
Really?
you will sit down and enjoy your espresso. I don't even think they had a to-go cup.
That's awesome.
But, I mean, those are the kind of things that I do like for my children to experience, just to see that the world is a big place. And I remember we were in Costa Rica, Katie and I and Stephen, and we went to one of the experiences we had was to go make tortillas at somebody's house. It was such a unique experience. And there were some kids running around playing with farm animals, like running around. And I looked over at Katie, who had spent so much time at the dance studio, and I said, look at this. There's no dance studio here.
Right.
And there's no, and the kids are just running around and they're having fun and they're totally happy, but it's just a completely different way of life that I think is so important for everyone to see, but especially the kids who get in a routine and, think that the whole world revolves around exactly what they're doing, which it's good for kids to be able to see different parts of the world and the ways that different people are raised. And
yes,
that.
I think so too. And also to know that there's alternatives to the way that we live, that sometimes we're so busy because everybody else is so busy and that's just our culture. And then you go over to Europe and you do see how they don't even have to-go cups and they sit down and enjoy their coffee and have a conversation. And you're like, wow, could I incorporate that into my lifestyle here?
Yes.
And it did, I remember it made me kind of come back and think, yeah, maybe I just don't try to accomplish so much in a day. But, I might not produce as much in my lifetime, but I might live longer. I might have better health. I mean, it's really worth it. You get to be over 50, you're like, that's not such a bad idea.
I know. And it does seem like that people sit down, and especially in, that was my take the last time I went to Paris, that people are in cafes and they're sitting there and they're chatting with each other and they're not on their phone. We stayed in a hotel in Paris that I love, and it had this chess set in the lobby. And we had been out and it was cold, and we sat down and started playing chess. And we really didn't know how to play. Stephen knows how to play, and Katie and I didn't, but we had so much fun. And so every time we went back in the lobby, we sat there and played a game of chess. And that's one of my takeaways from that trip was we slowed down for a second and learned to do something new,
Wow, I love that. And it reminds me, too, that Harry's priest here at the Greek Orthodox Church, Father Gregory, he used to be a priest in Greece. And I remember, I guess it was last year when he came, or maybe the first year when he came to bless our house. We get a house blessing every January. But I was asking him, I was like, what's the biggest difference between, living in America and having lived in Greece? And he's like, really, it's the pace. And he goes, in Greece, if you ran into a friend that you had not seen, in 2 years, and, you all of a sudden just had this great conversation. You said, hey, let's go get coffee. You would just drop everything and go have coffee for 3 hours. He's like, here, you might say, well, let's get coffee one day. Let's make plans to do it. You might do it or you might not, but you don't have the time to just go drop everything and go have coffee. And I don't know why that always stuck with me. I was like, it's just really about leaving margin in your calendar for those unexpected things to happen. But, and that's something I've had to learn the hard way, because I used to pack my calendar so tight, there was no margin. And that is what I love about the European way, is that they don't do that.
Yes, I'm very guilty of the packed calendar for sure. It is nice to have the opportunity to slow down and exhale a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And so, so we said that the third step, if you're planning a trip to Europe, the second step is to do that discovery call.
Right.
Third step is to discuss the budget.
Yeah. So the budget is, sometimes a yucky topic, and people don't always know what their budget is. So we talk through those details. We try to make sure that we hit the threshold of what, if they say we have $10,000 to spend on this trip, I try to be very mindful of that. And I take it seriously if it's $10,000 or if it's $30,000, because everybody's trip is really important to them. So the way that we measure that is, how much does this hotel cost per night, and how much would this tour cost, and then how much are the add-ins for transportation, flights, are very expensive these days, and things like that. But we set a general budget, a basic budget, so that I don't turn around and present a trip to somebody that costs $10,000 more than they were expecting. So it keeps us on the same page.
That's good. I like that. And then when you're planning the trip, I guess you're thinking about the budget too, as far as, say, if they're going to 3 different cities in Europe, where would you put the really cool hotel? Do you try to do that in the middle? Do you try to do that at the end?
So I always put the cherry on top of the ice cream at the very end. So generally my flow for Italy would be Venice south to Positano, because Positano is the Instagrammable place, and it's on the cliff, and it's the boat day, and just the sunshine and all the good things. But I mean, and I like the trip to build. There's nothing wrong with Venice or Rome or Tuscany. It's just the end is kind of a splash when you have it be the most relaxing part of your trip too. So your pace may be heavier in Rome than it is in Positano, because there's so much to see and so much to do, and you're with the guide.
That's good. That's good. So if you're going to a city where there's a fast pace, make the next one a little bit slower pace.
Right. Right. So and we talk about how many times do you want to move in 8 days? Because that's packing up, putting your clothes in your bag, and going to the train and getting on the train, and then getting off the train and going to the new hotel. And so, are your kids, 3 and 5 when you're doing that, or 17 and 19? I mean, that makes a difference if you're lugging, their bags. So a lot of times, clients would like to pack as much in as they can. So the phrase I hear a lot is, well, we're going all the way over there, so we might as well do as much as we can. But you really don't want to overdo it. You don't want to schedule so much where, you're dragging your 3-year-old behind you like you did at Disney.
Yeah. And they're crying.
Because they're
then you're upset.
Miserable.
I spent all this money and you're not appreciating it.
And they don't even know what the Mona Lisa is. So yeah, I really do try to work. And on those type aspects. And I also try to make sure, like I said, that if it's a long day of touring castles, that please let's do something fun at the end for the kids.
That's good.
So it keeps them engaged. Because, our kids are the age now where, they're in college or going to college, and all I can hope for is that Katie still wants to travel with me when she's older. I want to make it fun.
Yes. Oh, yes. And she will. I know she will. So, and then we said step number 4 is to curate key activities and excursions. But like you said, strike a balance on pace. So what are your favorite things? What are your favorite activities or excursions to send people on? What do you hear the best feedback on?
The most fun, I think, in all of Europe is the sidecar tour, which is hilarious. It is a motorcycle and a sidecar. And depending on what city you're in, they whisk you around to all these sites and monuments. And they are adult, grown tour guides that have motorcycle licenses. And they take you to the Eiffel Tower, and then they tell you all you need to know about the Eiffel Tower, and then you take a picture outside the Eiffel Tower, and then you're zipping through the streets of Paris in the sidecar tour. So those pictures are the ones that I get sent the most, and they're hilarious. One that I just got was a friend who had tied a scarf around, and it was blowing in the breeze, and she was zipping through Paris, and it was just, and her friends were like, "Where are you, and what are you doing?" We do a behind the glass Churchill War Rooms tour, which seems super valuable to people. We do skip the lines. It's not exactly skip the lines, but you are ticketed in time to get into the Louvre, and so you're not standing in line. That seems to be, efficiency seems to be something that people will definitely pay pay for. Because if you're there in the summer, it's really hot and there's crowds of people, and you want to be able to walk into the experience, hear the guide, and not wait for hours and hours and hours.
So if somebody wants to go in the summer, how far in advance do they need to be planning? A year in advance, at least 6 months in advance, or is that hard to say?
Well, your travel agent loves a year because
you get more choices. I would think.
It gives me lead time. It gives me more choices. It's all about space on the airplane, space in the hotel, space. The tour guides fill up, space on the trains. So when the hotels release their rates a year out, if you already know, here's what I want to do, here's my basic outline, then we secure the hotels. And I tell my clients all the time, you just exhale after that. We can filter in the experiences in 6 months.
Oh, so the hotels will give you their prices a year in advance.
Typically.
That's good. That's good to know.
And the airlines is maybe 15 months, 16 months in advance. So you have some lead time, and a lot of times people don't know because somebody decides that they're going to have a destination wedding at Lake Como, and you all of a sudden can go, and that's part of the magic of travel is figuring out how you can get them there. And that's my personality too. I love to be given a task and say, can we pull this off? So
I love that.
It's fun.
Oh, I love that. Okay. Step 4. Step 5, refine the proposal. Basically get the whole plan nailed down. Would you say that ideally you want to do that like 6 months in advance?
That would be great.
Yeah.
The proposal is really important. Most of mine come like an a la carte menu. So we'll have the cities listed that you're going to travel to. We'll have 2 or 3 options for hotels in each city at different price points and at different locations. And if families are traveling, we'll try to find family rooms in the hotels, which is nice. We'll have 4 or 5 different tours that some we have discussed and maybe some we haven't, that we're just throw in to see if you're interested. And so you'll go city by city, pick the hotel that feels the best to you, pick the tours, and then maybe with your red pen, you're there like, nope, I don't want to do that. Yes, I want to do that. Circle the good stuff and X out what you don't want to do. And then we'll revise that document and present it as one cohesive trip plan.
That's awesome.
And then you pay for about 30% of that up front, and then the balance is paid 60 days before you travel, typically.
Okay. Is that usually when you book the flights too, is once you finalize the proposal, or do you do that before?
I like to do the proposal first. So since flights are not refundable and are harder to change, I like to make sure the land portion of the trip is all squared away.
Yes.
That we can secure all the hotel space we need, so we know if you're flying into Venice and you're flying out of Naples, the hotels are secured and we can go ahead. And then we do all the transportation in between to the airport. And we have an air desk at Brownell that's amazing, and they come up with super secret ways to get places that even I can't do. And we have an insurance desk as well. So if you want to insure your trip, you can insure it.
Oh, definitely. And what about like timing as far as if you're going to Europe? What would you say between May and September? I've sometimes heard that May or September can be good times to travel, especially if it's a couple, just because it's not as crowded.
Right. So for Europe, it's almost year-round now. It's crazy, with the exception of Greece, which during the winter months, you miss out on some of the opportunities because a lot of, say, Santorini and the islands are closed down. So I love to travel in May. I think if you can get there before Memorial Day, you might have a little slice of less crowded. June, July, and August are super crowded. September maybe slightly better depending on where you're going. But if you're not traveling with kids and you're not bound to a school schedule, I would go. We have been to Paris in December. We have been to London in December. You could go, October and November. It just depends on what you want to do. So if you're going to the Chelsea Flower Show in London, then that only happens one time a year, and you have to plan your trip around that. If you want to be outdoors in the summer and on boats, then you have to plan your trip around that. But I have a couple that's going to Provence that's renting a villa in October and November for a month, and she's getting an amazing rate, and she's going to walk into town and get her bread and cheese and wine and sit on her porch with her husband. They're retired, and she got a great deal on a beautiful house, and her kids that are older will come and visit her for part of the time. It's dreamy.
Okay, I'm like all these places are on my bucket list. That I'm like, okay, I'm dying to do the south of France too, and London and Paris. I've never been to either.
Well, London and Paris is a great combo because you can Eurostar in between them. Mm-hmm. So we do a lot of London, Paris.
And is there some train that goes underground?
That's the Eurostar.
Oh, that's the Eurostar. Yeah. Okay.
So
I've heard that's
real
really
fast to get in between the two cities, and that's a great way to start in Europe. London is a great way to start in Europe because there's no language barrier, and it's just fun, and there's so much history, and then plays and shopping, and it's a great place to start, and that kind of whets your appetite, and then you're like, oh gosh, where am I going next?
Where next? I know. Oh, it's so fun. Okay, I want to go somewhere tomorrow. Okay, number 6, we said book the trip, which we just talked about. 7, flights and insurance.
Flights and insurance.
I'm sure you always recommend getting trip insurance.
I do recommend trip insurance. I get trip insurance. Mm-hmm. Most of my clients get trip insurance. It's an investment. Like, it's not as big as a house investment, but it can be as big as a car investment. And for some reason, if you could not go, or if somebody got sick, or something happened, it's nice to be able to not, have lost all that money, because it's already such a disappointment if you plan for 6 months and you can't go. So yes, we have insurance, an insurance desk at Brownell that's great.
Okay, step 8, use a travel app.
So we, when we finalize all your documents, we take them and load them into an app that you can view on your phone called Axis, and it's amazing. It keeps the kids from saying, what are we doing today? Mm-hmm. So everyone that has a phone has the app on their phone, and it has all your plans in there. For your train tickets are QR coded in there, your airline tickets.
Oh, wow.
Everything is all on your phone.
That's so nice.
Your tours, your dinners. So we do a lot of concierge work. My team does a lot of concierge work too. So we'll plan your dinners. We'll make all your dinner reservations for you while you're over there. We'll get your theater tickets. So all of that is a handy app that is right there on your phone for you to refer to.
Oh, this is so awesome. Okay. And then 9, celebrate the value of family travel.
I found this quote, and I think it's so good. It says, by the time your child is 18, they will have spent 93% of the time they will ever spend with you in their lifetime. So go make some memories.
Yeah.
Take some trips.
Yep, I agree. Like I said, we just have that little window of time.
I know. It goes fast.
Yes. Okay, well, this is awesome. And let's think about, I know you get a lot of frequently asked questions and just other logistical travel tips, whether you're going to Europe or taking another big trip. What's some advice that you give to people?
I can read you I can tell you all of the most common questions, and give you some tips of what we do. So we purchased international chargers from Amazon. Mm-hmm. They went in our stockings one year, and we take those everywhere we go. The ones that we bought work in several different countries, so it's nice. Everybody has one and has their name on there. And yes, the hotels, depending on where you will have an international charger for you to use, but it's super nice to have one.
Yeah, and I like that you said putting their name on them, like doing a sticker with their name, because we have left those chargers in the hotels, and I think you're more likely to see it if it's got a name on it and you're passing by the plug and you see it in there.
Definitely. Mm-hmm. And nobody's fighting over whose charger that is if you have
exactly
5 girls in your family or whatever. Let's see. Is there laundry at hotels? Typically, there's always laundry. So if you're going on an extended trip and you don't want to pack everything you own, you can get your dresses laundered, or or your workout clothes or whatever. Tipping is always a big one. And so what we do is, to your final documents that we send on the Access app, we attach the tipping guide. Mm-hmm. So the tipping guide will say, for a driver for the day, we suggest X amount of euros. And what that does is it helps people when they plan to go. Mm-hmm. So they can go to the bank before they leave, and they can say, okay, I'm going to get 300 euros, and that's going to take care of the tipping for the first 2 or 3 days. Mm-hmm. And then when you're in Europe, you can get currency at your hotel or through an ATM or.
Yes. And when I've gone to get euros at a local bank, they usually need a few days. They don't always have it in stock, so they usually need a few days' notice to
That's right.
get it. Okay.
That's right. So you can just call your bank and say, I'm going to be traveling internationally. So you can call your bank, and then you can also text on the app your cell phone company mm-hmm. and talk to them about how many days you're going to be traveling. And they have, depending on the carrier, they have a travel pass that's $10 a day. So mm-hmm. you have access to your phone and all your social media accounts and your email and stuff like that when you're traveling. So
yes, and that is something that we to tell our children, like when they were younger, y'all don't get this. So they would be waiting to get the Wi-Fi at the hotel or wherever we were. But and if you send one text, I think at the time it would automatically kick in. Because $10 a day, if you're gone for 10 or 20 days, it can per person can add up.
It can add up.
But yes, and so so you call your cell phone provider and let them know. Otherwise, I think it's really expensive, isn't it?
It's very expensive.
Yeah.
You would not want to be. And I think once you sign up, it detects when you're traveling internationally, mm-hmm. and it will text you and say, do you want to start a travel pass for wherever you are, Costa Rica?
Yes, because the $10 a day is a lot better than the other fee would be.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. What else?
So do you need a visa? All those kind of, let me go back. You need a passport when you're traveling internationally. And the rule of thumb on the passport is that it must be valid for 6 months after you return. So they will look at your passport, and every country is slightly different, but as a rule of thumb, you do not want to be traveling even close with a closely expired passport.
Let me add something here. I've been on 2 senior trips already, and on both trips, we've had people that could not go on the trip and realized it a few days beforehand because of their passport. Their passport was going to expire in that 6-month window. So, a few people, they had to drive to New Orleans. It was kind of an ordeal, right before. Another person had to wait, I think, 2 days, and her daughter was not very happy,
that is the travel agent nightmare for sure. And so we have a form, when you work with us, we have a form, and you upload your passport to the client engagement form. So we try to check it. And I have not had that happen to me, knock on wood, but it's often a 2 a.m. thought.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to make sure everybody's passport's okay. I've got to make sure everybody's passport's
And these are probably situations where they didn't have a travel agent. So yet another reason why you need
There we
Kathryn
go.
Burns.
That's right. That's right.
Get Kathryn to plan it for you. What about medicine or anything like that people need to take? What do you recommend?
So when we travel, I travel with anything that I'm taking daily with me on the plane, mm-hmm. not in the checked luggage in the carry-on. I also travel with an antibiotic in case I'm somewhere and I feel like I can't. If somebody gets sick, if I have amoxicillin, then I know mm-hmm. it's American amoxicillin, and I know it's not going to cause a reaction with anybody. I travel with a thermometer and Band-Aids and, normal mom stuff. Now in this era, if you got sick somewhere, we would come to your rescue and help you. We would send a doctor or find a doctor, and you would be very, very well taken care of. It has not happened to me getting sick on an international trip, but I did have a client that got sick in Greece during the COVID era, and it was no fun, but they're going to do a redo on the trip. So.
Oh, good. Yeah, they need to go back. What about packing? What is some of your advice for it? And this is, I mean, I laugh at myself because I don't care how hard I try. I'm not a very good packer. And we laugh when we have done these trips with the cousins because the first trip we went on, Kim Pack us girls, we all had these huge suitcases, like we could barely carry it. And then the Jatina boys, their cousins came up, and they had these tiny little bags. And we're like,
they were carried on.
Yeah, big carry. I think one of them, the youngest one at the first trip, like his mom was saying, I think we might have had all of his clothes like in a big Ziploc bag. I mean, we were like, you could barely lift our suitcases.
Well, the Burns overpack for sure. I like to be prepared for all different kinds of activities. I do some funny things. If I know I'm going to exercise on a trip, which I typically do, I take my oldest pair of running shoes and I leave them in the hotel. And we were in a hotel in Paris, and they had a note. I thought it was so interesting that said, if you are leaving clothes or shoes behind, please put them in this bag so we know that we're not to throw them away and we can give them away. So a lot of people...
Oh, wow. So a lot of people do that.
A lot of people do that. Not as much with clothes for me, but shoes. I'm super careful about what jewelry I take no matter where I go, especially if I'm going to the Caribbean or somewhere like that. I'm super careful with that. And I use packing cubes where I can, and I try to plan out outfits. And, I'm a much better travel planner than I am a travel packer, for sure.
Yes. And something to add on there, too. We learned this lesson the hard way. Well, one thing I've learned to tell people if they're going to Greece, because nobody told us this, is to make sure you bring water shoes, because we learned that the hard way. A lot of those rocks, the edges are really jagged. And so it was, I think we were in Naxos, and Sophie had her little selfie camera, and she was trying to, take a picture of herself, and she was walking on this rock, and it just like split her foot wide open. I know. And it's like your nightmare as a mom. And so anyway, I laughed because we were first, Harry and I couldn't find the hospital because everything was written in Greek. So we tried to, it was an experience. And then we get to the hospital, and I'm not kidding, it looks like MASH. I mean, I was like, oh my word, like I want Children's Hospital. This is scaring me.
Did she get stitches?
She had to get stitches. I mean, I was praying so much. I'm like, I don't know what their protocol is. I don't know if they're going to flush out her foot. I mean, it truly, her foot was like
it's nerve-wracking.
Open.
Stuff like that is really nerve-wracking.
And so I learned later that you should always bring water shoes and be in those water shoes if they're walking on the rocks. But yeah, she ended up being okay. But talking about a doctor, I think we were going to Athens and Spetses. She needed to have a doctor look at her foot like 2 more times before we were leaving. And we're like, how are we supposed to do this? Because we're traveling to different places. And so they stitched it up in this hospital. And I mean, I will never forget that them giving her the biggest needle to try to numb it. It was an ordeal. I wouldn't recommend it. But they stitched up her foot. And then I think we went to Spetses next, and they had the doctor on the island come look at it. And he treated it, and then he needed to look at it a few days later. But we were going to be in Athens. But it was such a God thing, which I think so many times you just see God's hand in these situations. He actually had an office in Athens, and he went there once a week, and he was going to be there the day that we were there.
Of course.
So he was able to come to our hotel. But anyway, so that was a good lesson, but we probably could have prevented it all if we just had water shoes in the first place.
Well, sensible shoes is a silly comment, but when I'm walking around in a foreign country, I'm wearing tennis shoes. They might be cute tennis shoes, but I'm wearing tennis shoes. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not wearing dress shoes to go sightseeing anywhere.
Yeah, especially because a lot of it's like, especially it's unlevel.
Right.
I mean, and a lot of the things that, I thought about my mom. I was like, there are a lot of places we went, especially these islands, like there's no handicap accessible, or, you got to kind of look out for yourself.
Yes.
Like things, you might have steps in some random places because the area is really old, and it's not like it's been updated like something might have been here.
Right, for sure. So, yeah, I mean, take your most comfortable shoes, and if it's winter, take a warm jacket. It's cold, you're going to be outside. And one of the things that I like to do when I travel is walk cities. I think you see a lot. And so when I was in Paris, Stephen and Katie cabbed it everywhere, but I walked to the Louvre and walked all these places.
That's awesome.
It's just really fun to be able to, but you need the right clothes. You need a warm coat, or you need, there's cultural things for going into the Vatican and stuff that you tell people that you have to, you definitely have to be aware of those, cover your head and things like that. No wearing shorts.
That's a great point. And we, even like we've been in some monasteries in Greece, and you've got to cover your shoulders.
Right.
And so we had to bring like a little wrap for that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's important to know. And then, along those lines, there's new guidelines coming out for Europe all the time. So there's an ETA that you have to have for the UK now. And we just have a great communication system at Brownell where everybody's watching to make sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, as we're wrapping up here, what are I know anywhere is great, but like what are your favorite vacation spots? If you had to recommend maybe a top 5 or top 10, what would you recommend?
For me or for anyone? Or?
For anyone that's wanting to go to Europe and go.
Okay, for Europe. Okay. So, I love the France experience. I love the cultural experience of seeing all these things, historical places that are super, super old. So that's France is really fun. Normandy is so important to so many people. Versailles, people want to see. South of France is beautiful and just so charming. Provence and that area. Italy, so much fun for families, so historical. Same with London. We do a ton of Spain, a ton of Switzerland for the outdoorsy people. Stephen and I were in Ireland last year, and it was pure magic. The nicest people and castles and rolling hills, and there are pictures of me, feeding sheep on the side of the road. And we did this amazing falconry experience where you hold out your hand and the owl comes and lands on your arm. It's just so crazy. I mean, just stuff that you wouldn't normally do anywhere. There's so many. I mean, my Australia and New Zealand trip my family will tell you and they weren't with me, but that was one of my most favorite trips. On my bucket list or on anyone's bucket list should be South America. I think Patagonia would be just crazy. I think Troy from Brownell just got back from Antarctica, and I think that would be spectacular. I mean, I have a very long list. And Stephen, if I say, what if we do this? He doesn't engage until I've bought the plane tickets, because I change my mind so often about where we're going to go and what we're going to do. And he doesn't care, so he's just along for the ride.
I'll tell you what else is on my bucket list is a safari. Have you done that yet?
We have not. We have a safari planned that we're going to try to take in 2025 as a family, but I've sent a ton of families. And one of my most memorable trips was I had a family of 3 go for 41 days in Africa.
Oh, wow.
Last year. And it was so much fun to put together, and they're such great family friends. It was just so much fun to watch that unfold. I have an amazing partner in Africa that I use for all my trips, and that's everybody's bucket list, for sure.
Wow. Well, and I'm thinking, part of me, sometimes I get so sad thinking about what am I going to do when my girls all leave home and it's just me and Harry, and then I'm like, okay,
go travel with
empty
me.
Nesters. I know. I'll be your assistant. How about that?
You can just go with me. That'll be so much fun.
I know. I really am like, my bucket list is even longer now, but I think it's good to have something to look forward to.
It is. It definitely is.
Okay, good. And anything else that people can reach you, like we said, through Instagram, website, once it's up and running?
Kathryn at Kathryn Burns Travel is my email, and we can put that at the end of the show notes, I guess. Or
yes, I'll include that in the show notes, and then any other links that you have, just helpful travel information.
We work through the Virtuoso Network, which is nice, that gets you some perks. And Brownell, obviously, is, really, really well connected as the oldest travel agency in the country. So, call me up. Let's plan a trip.
That's awesome. Kathryn, you're awesome and amazing travel agent.
Oh, well, thank you.
If anybody's in the market, reach out to Kathryn. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
We'll have to do a part 2 one day.
Okay, great.
Friends, thank you for tuning in today. I am so grateful to have you here. And if you enjoyed this show, please subscribe wherever you listen and leave a ratings or review so that other people can find these messages too. For links to my books, my social media, and my new community on Substack, check out the show links. Thanks again for your support, and have a great day.